Good morning. Just a couple of thoughts this morning that I thought were kind of really important to me, and if in time they might be to you, awesome. Just looking at the story again in John chapter 9, particularly of the man who was born blind that Jesus was able to heal. And I love a very simple statement that keeps coming over and over again in the story, like 3 different times. Where he says, I went, where Jesus said to go to the pool of Siloam, I washed, and now I can see. So Jesus is actually first by putting the clay on his eyes, but then he says, go, wash, and see. And that's as simple as sort of what faith is. It's just letting Jesus wash us clean with his Holy Spirit live in us, and let us see. But today in John 8 or 9, we're really looking at some of the people who couldn't see. And these were the Pharisees who were kind of pushing away truth. And sometimes we can't give any reason for why we're allowed to see, why God gives us faith. But in our unbelief, it's kind of, we might not understand why people can't see either when Jesus comes to them, but kind of gave some understanding of the Pharisees a little bit today. So they have this awesome miracle, this man who had tortured his life from never being able to see, and having to pretty much beg for a living. Now the Pharisees are angry because he's healed, and they're really looking at being angry at Jesus for a lot of different reasons, and not just this, but they couldn't celebrate this healing. And you think, I think it's been a mystery. We look at, why did the Pharisees hate him so much? And so that's what I kind of want to look at for a minute. So they brought in this man to kind of interrogate him, and they asked him what happened. And he said that simple message, I went, I listened, I went, and now I can see. I washed and now I see. But then it says that they brought also in the parents, and trying to get them to kind of implicate Jesus, and all they could say is, yeah, it's our son. He was blind from birth and he can see. And so, but they were afraid, it says. And it says they were afraid to say much more, like about Jesus, because they were afraid of the Jews, and that there already was a decision, and this might have only been like 3 months since Jesus was really publicly on the scene, that they already had made like a law that anybody who, how did they put it, acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. And that really means kind of expelled from life in the Jewish world. And so there was a big threat put upon them. So then again, we look at, why were they so threatened? Why did they hate Jesus so much? Well, again, being part of God's plan, of course, that Jesus would die for us. But a couple thoughts that Matthew Henry gave that I think are important when we think about our own blindness, and just trying to understand the pride on the part of the Pharisees, or the blindness. So here's a sentence, that good can sometimes be maligned under the imputation of something evil. So here we have something really good, and then just trying to look at something that could be made ugly or evil from it. And so really kind of a lot of this anger goes into that it was done on a Sabbath, that Jesus healed on the Sabbath. But again, that's just all nitpicky little stuff that they're trying to pick out. And so here's some things. People who are in the darkness cannot bear the light of the truth, and so they try to eclipse it or hinder the discovery of this light. And so Jesus was against the Pharisees in their minds, because he had spiritual worship. So like when he talked to the woman at the well, he said that real worship is worship that's done in spirit and in truth. And they were all about the formalities, like, of the Sabbath. Jesus was about love, and they didn't understand that. They were used to things being tradition and ritual and formalities. The second thing is that they have very single, narrow spiritedness. It was just kind of certain people were to be cared for, were to be valued, were to be loved and treated with love. And Jesus came loving the tax collector and sinner, this universal charity that confused them. They came with sort of an idea of bragging, of sorts of looking better, of feeling that they were better than the rest, which is a slippery slope to pride. And Jesus came humble, born in Bethlehem, living in Galilee, that they considered one of the least important. People would not come from that town if they were worth anything necessarily. He came denying himself. So they were looking for this man coming in, the Messiah, in their image of the Messiah. And again, I ask God to help me in any image, any preconceived images of really anything that I think I know, even where I'm going or who people are, that it's God to reveal to me, and keeping an open mind for God to reveal his ways and how he sees things, and opening my eyes to that they don't stay blind. So this Messiah in their mind was going to come with pomp and splendor, free them from the Romans, advance the Sanhedrin, their courts. And instead, again, Jesus comes even into town later on a donkey, humble. The people he picked were not anything that was educated. They were just fishermen. And Jesus didn't come, begging for their opinions on things or bowing down to their courts. Instead, he came knowing he knew the truth. He didn't need to ask them for truth or to debate truth. He came knowing the truth, and it even stood out to them that he taught. That's what kind of, I think, had people attracted to that, as he spoke as one who knew the truth, who wasn't having it up for debate or insecure in that, even though he was humble. He came for spiritual deliverance, not just to deliver them from the Romans. And he came not giving people the assurance that they will be freed from outside or governmental authorities, but and not even assured that there'd be no trouble in their lives, but just the opposite, that there would be trouble as disciples. So I just think that kind of thinking in our heads of what was so threatening with Jesus, and as far as just he threw their whole thinking into a whirlwind and challenged that. And people don't like their blindness challenged of sorts. And so later, when they are asking the blind man, who now can see, more and more questions that are the same questions, he just kind of answers and goes, well, I already told you and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples? And that really makes them angry. But it kind of begs to the point of, if people haven't listened and they're not listening, how dangerous that is. That it shows that they're not trying to learn, they're not teachable, and then they're not going to be able to take the grace that God is giving them. And so none of us knows where a person is at in their openness and in their blindness, but that's all God to figure out. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. And then the devotion, again, you can find it on Bible Gateway under devotions for February 9th. I just liked the verse that it talks about David in 2 Samuel 5, verse 23, where it says he inquired of the Lord. So even after his victory with the Philistines, he still stayed humble to say, I'm not going to assume anything. I'm not going to race forward And I pray that in everything that I do and you do, that we stay first saying, I know I might want this, or God, I might think I know, but I'm still really beholden to your direction. I need you like a sheep needs its shepherd. Because I liked how I put this here. I'm almost done. I know it's a long one today. We don't want to go before the cloud of God's providence, because remember, in the wilderness, the Israelites were led by God's cloud to know where to go, because then I'm on a fool's errand. If I go before the cloud of God's providence, I'm on a fool's errand. And another saying, these aren't in the Bible, but as surely as we carve for ourselves, as we just do our own carving of our future on our own with our own fingers, it will cut our fingers. And then if we run before providence, or in other words, if we try to be ahead of where God is at, we'll be happy to run back again. We'll recognize that that wasn't working. I'm not safe there. That's not where God is. I want to be. God is everywhere, but this isn't where his intention for me was to be, and he'll accept us back. That's cool, Dad. Sorry it's so long, but I haven't recorded for days, so we have some catching up to do. Have a great Sunday. God bless your day. Thanks for listening.